all I'm saying is when I was down in the valley, those voices were still loud. Right. So there was a number of things adding up that were like against me. And once the devil's got you and you're weak, and I'm talking about you're weak, I was helpless. I was broken. It was like being paralyzed.
Hello, and welcome to the Loveshaped Life podcast. Our goal is for you to see, experience, and live the radical love of God. We hope that you'll enjoy this podcast. Today's a little bit of a role reversal. I'm sure you're used to seeing Pastor Bob as the host, but today I'm going to be your host, and today is season 4, episode 2. And I don't know if you remember me from season 2. I was interviewed by Pastor Bob in my journey of faith. So today is going to be like, we're going to turn the tables a little bit, and we're going to have you to find out a little bit more about your host, Pastor Bob, and his journey. And he's titled it The Greatest Trip of My Life. So we're anxious to see what trip he's been on.
Yeah, well, Rick, first of all, we want to thank you for coming and being the host today, and for your story that you shared with us about your cancer journey, and just how God worked in your life. And now here you are today.
Yes.
We're reversing the roles a little bit. So,
well, it's an honor to be here. I know we've been friends for over 10 years, and I've gotten to see your journey as well. So I'm thankful to be here to be part of it.
That's good. So it's all yours. You just ask me questions, and I'm ready to go.
Well, I'm sure your viewers would like to know a little bit more about you because they've only seen you as a host. So they want a little bit more about how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? A little bit about your family life.
Yeah, I grew up in Upstate New York.
Okay.
I was the youngest of 7 children. And we were raised in a religious home. It just wasn't really practiced. I loved my dad. Unfortunately, my dad was addicted to alcohol. So it made the home life not so rough. I mean, not so rough, but rough. Sorry. Very rough.
Well, that's a pretty big family, 7 kids. Which one were you in the sequence?
I was the baby of the family.
The baby.
I was the baby of the family. So growing up in that environment, but as I grew up, somebody... when I turned 13 years old, somebody encouraged me to read something about God and what life was like in that area, and I kind of brushed it off. But I began to read the Bible when I was 16 years old, and as I read the Bible, I was impressed that the love that Jesus talked about was something that I wanted, right? Being kind to people and compassionate and, forgiving. That was the type of life that I wanted to live. So I was embracing and relating with it.
It's pretty amazing that at such a young age, you already felt that calling to be kind and compassionate. And
yeah, well, I think when you see a lot of trouble around you, you're looking for something. And God's speaking to all of our hearts. I mean, Jesus compared the work of God on human beings' hearts like the wind. We can't see where it's coming from or where it's going, but we can feel the effects, right? True. So God really speaks to all of our hearts wherever we are. It's just a matter of whether we choose to respond to it or not. So that was my journey. I became a Christian when I was 19 years old. I decided to make that a way of life, and that became my journey. Later on in life, I did enter the ministry and served as a pastor for 30 years, and got married, my beautiful wife, Melanie. We have 2 children. My oldest daughter, Kayla, is 16 now, and our youngest, Justin, is 12 years old now.
That's kind of ironic that your daughter is the same age that you were when you first started hearing about God and having that impression upon your heart to follow him.
Yeah, that's I never thought about that. I didn't until you just mentioned it, but it is, and it's such an interesting role. Now you're reversed, right? You're looking back, and now you have children. So.
That's right. It's the next generation, the next chapter.
The next generation.
So you mentioned earlier that this is the trip of a lifetime. So what trip is it that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah.
Have you been on some trips?
Yes. We do like to travel.
Oh, that's great.
We probably don't travel as much as we would like to. But last year in 2023, our first trip was to the Philippines. We spent a month there. My wife is from the Philippines. We were there with her family and just celebrating together. It's the Filipinos tend to be very close and
Yes.
tightly knit, and so there's a lot of family members, and it's just a wonderful experience. And we wanted our kids to experience the culture of my wife's upbringing.
Had your kids ever been there before?
My daughter, when my father-in-law died, she was just a baby. And so that was before Justin was born. She did come, but she wouldn't remember anything because we just kind of...
What a great opportunity now that they're old enough to appreciate and, grasp everything with all of their senses that they have.
Yeah, that was our hope. Yeah,
that.
and they get to meet their cousins and hang out with their cousins, and it's just it was a great experience. And so then when we came home, we also the kids and I went on a trip to Iceland.
Iceland? That's like out of this world.
Yeah, well, it sounds Iceland sounds like cold and everything, but and it was much colder, but. It's not kind of what you picture. There's a lot of greenery and so on and so forth. So that was a great experience. We went there on a mission trip. So
wow!
But we did get to see. I have to do. It was during the colder time of year, so we did get to see snow and a fair amount of snow at one point. So it was good. It's all.
I really admire you that you're able to travel across the globe and take your family with you. And how was it? The contrast between such a tropical environment in the Philippines and then going to like an Arctic environment in Iceland.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a. It was quite a difference in as far as the climates and the environments go. And again, you're coming from a third world country too, as the Philippines, versus not a third world country. And so the difference between the two was great. But myself personally, I prefer tropical, but I do like the change in seasons.
Me too.
I like to visit, but it doesn't necessarily mean I want to stay anymore because the cold just doesn't do well with me as much.
And just for our viewers, do they speak English in Iceland?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They do have their own language, but the main language is spoken
so
is
communication
English.
was not a problem.
English, no communication.
So you've been on 2 epic trips, more than people do in their entire lifetime. You did them both in the same year. What a privilege! So is this the trip of a lifetime that you were talking about?
It wasn't. No. One of my favorite things to do is to hike in the mountains, and I think the favorite place that we went to, my favorite place, was Mount Baker in Washington State. Because going to Mount Baker, I encourage anybody that has a chance to go if you like mountains. Especially during the summer, you get like 80 degrees and still go up in the snow, and then you see patches where the snow is gone and the flowers are coming up. So, by the grace of God, we've been on some nice trips and some very enjoyable trips. But my favorite trip of all was where I went, and this was by myself. Wow. So I had pastored for 30 years. I worked for a denomination. It came time for me to move, as denominations do. So, but it was at that point of season in my life. We had just kind of come out of COVID, and the church that they were asking me to go to, we decided to go incognito for a service, and it was a nice group of people. There was about 30 people there. There was hardly any children there at all, and I took a look around. Yeah. I can pretty much do an assessment and give you an assessment at the end of it. And I figured it was going to take about 5 to 7 years to turn the church around from what I could see in the community. And so I was in the bathroom. I prayed. I went in there by myself. I prayed. I said, God, if this is it, if this is what you want for me at this point in my life, then give me a willingness to take it on. But as I see the world and the situations in the world, I just have this longing desire to work together to expand the kingdom in a much more powerful way. Even though the local church is an amazing community, I actually loved my 30 years as a pastor. So I prayed that prayer. We got in the car. My kids were in the back seat. My wife hadn't gotten in yet. And I said to the kids, so what did you think? And I remember one of them saying, Daddy, please don't make us come here.
Oh, man. And
so that was tough, and I tried to say, this is it. Because it's hard when there's no children. They came from a place where there's a lot of children. So anyways, what happened was with circumstances, I was still willing to take it. It would have been a commute. But there's a denominational policy. You have to be within 30 minutes, and it wasn't going to work. So, and my wife had just been in a major car accident, and we just decided that, let's just resign for now. I chose to resign. I said, God, I'm putting myself in your hands.
Let's pause for a moment. And you mentioned that your wife was in an automobile accident. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I still remember today, I was in the backyard. I was, cleaning the yard, and it's going to be hard for me. So I was cleaning the yard, and my daughter came running out onto the back patio, and she said, Daddy, Mommy's been in an accident. And
those are the hardest words to hear when someone you love.
And she had never been in a car accident before. This was like her first car accident. And of course, you're hoping, for the best. And so I gathered the kids, and we went to the scene of the accident, and she wasn't there. She was taken away in an ambulance.
Oh, even more heart-wrenching because you don't know the outcome.
Yeah, the car was there. It was just totaled. I mean, it was just smushed in like a tin can,
I remember you sending me the pictures, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing, how badly damaged it was.
It was a T-bone, right? So somebody ran a red light as she was going through an intersection and got her good. So
and all this is happening at the same time that you're transitioning to a new career, and everything's kind of like converging at once.
Yeah, and that was our best car. I want to call it our best vehicle. What was interesting about that time, and I'll go back to the accident. What was interesting about that time was you couldn't just go buy a vehicle. That was coming out of COVID. We went into the car dealerships, and there was hardly any cars in the parking lot. We were like, well, what's going on? What happened to be there was a chip problem because of COVID, and so there was really like no real vehicles to buy other than the used vehicles went to the price of a new vehicle. And so it was really an odd time. So you just couldn't get a vehicle like we normally would go get a vehicle.
That added like a whole new layer to the complexity of the situation that you're in.
Correct. So back to the story. Yes. So when I got to the accident, the kids and I then went to the hospital. Praise God, she was all right. We were grateful, still are grateful that she was fine. She has damage still in her neck, in her back with her vertebrae. So she lives with that pain, right? She lives with it, which varies from day to day. But so that was kind of like an interesting time of doing that and resigning at the same time. So what happened was the first week that I had resigned, I had developed pain in my lower abdomen. Now I had been following what I would consider a fairly healthy lifestyle since I was a teenager. And that doesn't mean you don't get sick and doesn't mean that things just don't happen. I'm not saying that, but as a general rule, I had never been sick, never had any health problems. And I was a typical male. I hardly ever went to the doctor, but so
I can identify with that.
so I developed these pain in my lower abdomen, and it got worse at night, and it was radiating pain. And so I thought, oh, maybe I just sprained something and no big deal, but it wasn't going away. And so every night the pain was actually keeping me awake. I would wake up at night and I wouldn't be able to go back to sleep. And so I was losing sleep. I was sleeping like 2 to 3 hours a night.
That's not enough sleep.
It's not enough sleep. And I'm a type of person that I do well on, good 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So that limited amount of sleep really begins to weaken you.
Yes.
Right.
And me being so health conscious, being in the healthcare industry myself, we know that your body heals when you sleep. Right. So you need at least 7 to 8 hours continuous sleep for your body to function properly and to be in optimum performance.
Right. So I remember pulling in my driveway, and the pain was so bad that I actually had to lay over on top of the passenger seat because the pain was so bad in my abdomen one evening. And I went in the house and... it was bad. So I waited for my kids. I was waiting for my kids to go to bed.
That's okay.
I was waiting for my children to go to bed because I was going to go to the ER. And, you have these thoughts in your mind whether you're ever going to come back. It's really strange, but I've seen a lot through the years as a pastor, a lot of horrible tragedies. So.
And now here you are facing something yourself, and it's affecting your family.
So I lay down my clothes, And
It's okay, Pastor Bob. You're with friends here.
anyways, what happened was I did fall asleep, and I still woke up again in the night, and I didn't go. I know I should have went. I didn't go, but I had to do something. I had to get checked out, and it takes a lot for me to go to the doctor. So, being the typical male that I was, I decided to visit Dr. Google first.
The modern man that you are.
As good as Dr. Google is, there's a problem with Dr. Google. Dr. Google lays out a whole buffet, a table of what the possibilities are without necessarily nailing what the problem is. So
it gives you more anxiety.
Yeah, which was exactly more anxiety. So it went from a minor strain all the way to the different types of cancer. Right. And so when I would wake up in the night, you know what would happen then.
All these thoughts are rushing through your head.
Exactly. All of a sudden, all these thoughts were rushing through my head about possibilities and what it might be.
Right.
And every one of them seemed like there was some level of possibility in it, at least in my mind. So that didn't help me at all, didn't help my level of anxiety. It was at that point where thoughts started to come to my mind on a low level that perhaps this was God punishing me for the decisions that I had made.
Oh my!
Which was totally contrary to my picture of God. I had, through my journey in studying the Bible and my walk with God, I had really come to see a picture that God was love, and that I realized there's times where we suffer consequences for our own actions, but I didn't see that picture of God. But still, those voices were coming to my mind. So I did go into get checked out.
Okay, good.
They, of course, just did the physical exam at first, and then they decided to do a sonogram, and
which is an ultrasound.
An ultrasound, yeah. Thank you. And then about a week later, they came back and said it looks like it's a hernia. So okay, so
not good, but not horrible.
Not good, but not horrible. So we had the possibility that it was a hernia, and they suggested me to go see a surgeon, which I made an appointment, which was probably 6 weeks out. Maybe it was longer. I can't remember exactly because he was just so busy. So I made that appointment, and in the meantime, I was still waking up at night, still reflecting about all these possibilities, right? Even though they had said it's a hernia, it's not what was happening in my mind.
Right.
So I woke up one morning, and there was water on the kitchen floor, and it was around the dishwasher, so I just cleaned it up. I thought, okay, maybe water's coming from the dishwasher. I opened it up. Everything looked fine. I ran a cycle through. Everything seemed to be fine. Didn't have any problem. Several days went by. I woke up again. There was water on the kitchen floor again. Now this time I could see it was going underneath the cabinets. So I ended up going underneath the sink. I cut a hole in the floor of the cabinet and saw water underneath there. I cleaned that all up. I called a plumber because I thought that the drain was clogging or just backing up. I don't want to say clogging. It was backing up and going into the dishwasher, and that's where the water was coming from. So they came out. They did their thing. They said that they thought they found the problem. Everything was fine. We ran cycles. Everything was fine. And then a few days later, it happened again. So again, water. Now the cupboards were getting damaged,
getting warped,
and there was a problem going on. So they came back, they did more tests, they did it again. They said, well, we think it's solved, blah, blah, blah. And
so during this time, you're still having the abdominal pain?
Still having the abdominal pain.
Not sleeping well at night.
Not sleeping well at night. Stress level higher. My blood pressure went up to a high level. I never had high blood pressure in my life. And so my blood pressure was up. You mentioned anxiety.
Yes.
So there was an anxiety that was kicking in because I was having difficulty at time even eating. Because when you get to that level, there's an internal stress that begins to happen.
Your stomach becomes like a knot almost.
Yeah. So I was eating, but it wasn't the same. So so back to the story of the kitchen cabinets, as strange as it sounds. So the kitchen cabinets, we went away for the weekend. I turned the water off to the dishwasher and to the sink, and I come home and there's water on the kitchen floor.
Again. Oh my.
And so I said, man, what happened? I look underneath cabinets and there's water underneath there. I said, this can't be. So it turned out there was a rainstorm, and that rain was sending water into the foundation of the house. I never had that problem before. So now I had two problems. There was water coming from the dishwasher area and also water coming in from the foundation area.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah, and so to make to keep the story going, make a long story short, that what happened was because of the moisture that was there, these cockroaches started to appear, and a lot of them.
Sounds like
we
a
would
nightmare.
wake up at night. It was like a nightmare. They were just, if you turn the light on, they were just like all over the place. Call pest control. They said it's a German cockroach. It's very hard to get rid of. We emptied everything out, pantry, kitchen, everything. They sprayed, they fumigated through the outlets everywhere. It like barely touched them.
Interesting.
Yeah, which was interesting. Anyways, here's what was happening in my mind. These voices of saying, this is God doing it to you, began to intensify, right? And so there was guilt coming along, had I made a mistake in and the decision that I had made because of, these things were coming upon me, and the thoughts were that, look, the reason why they're coming upon you, your wife's in a car accident, you're having health problems, now you've got this strange thing happening with the water, and the foundation never had a problem with that, the water coming in, and now you got cockroaches invading your house. This is something different. I had never had so many things starting to happen
in
to
sequence.
Me. Yeah.
So let's just back up a minute. You had mentioned earlier that your view or your picture of God was one of love. And all of a sudden now you're talking about that you felt like this anxiety building up and that you felt that the guilt of the decision that you made. How did that guilt factor into the God of love that you had in the picture of your mind? Well,
this was the warfare that was happening in my mind. It was really a battle of how I saw God, which was how these thoughts that were coming to my mind about a picture of God that was perhaps punishing me for something that I had done, right? So it was like trying to, did I miss something in my journey? I was praying. I was saying, God,
Correct.
if I've missed something in regard to your character in my journey with you, please reveal it to me. I'm yours. I'm surrendering no matter what the case here, because I've had a relationship long enough with God that I was choosing not to give up on that. I was seeking to hold on to that. And if I was missing something in regard to perhaps what we would consider the justice of God, or did I miss something? What was the lesson that you were trying to teach me?
Because, for some people, they might just chalk it up to coincidence that these things just happened at the same time.
Yeah.
But here you've been a pastor for over 30 years, and you kind of had like a broader picture of what was happening or potentially could be happening.
And it kept going. That year, a hurricane came through. I was the only house on the block that got water into their house. So that came into the living room area, into the flooring area. We had to pull up the floorboards. I mean, it was just water. So then all of a sudden, again, this problem with the foundation had gone a little further. So the guilt. There was guilt coming. You see what I'm saying? Because it was a perplexing time, so there was guilt coming. And I want to share it was like this, right? That once guilt grabs a hold of you and starts to wear you down and beat you down, that you become like paralyzed, right? It grips you and it holds you. But I believe that guilt has a sibling, and guilt's sibling is shame. So once guilt holds you down far enough, then shame comes in. And shame stands for self-hatred at my expense. Self-hatred at my expense. See, once guilt comes, then shame comes, and then it's trying to flip it to your value, right? You're not of any value, and shame. So it can easily turn into self-hatred. And so then
it's that negative self-talk.
It's that negative self-talk, and that was where the battle was really raging for me. I'd never had so many things happening at one time.
That's a lot to absorb at once. I mean, here your wife was in a car accident, then you come home and then you have a problem with the plumbing, then the roaches, and now even though you got that fixed, now more water comes in because of the hurricane. and everything is just kind of bombarding you at once. So I can understand where you're feeling that way.
Yeah, and once you lose sleep, it's bad. I lost the ability to sleep through the night. It was 2 to 3 hours a night. And so even during the day, I couldn't nap. I used to be able to take a nap during the day. I would lay down and try to take a nap.
Your mind was just
racing. The
racing.
mind was just racing, yeah. And so I tried to keep myself busy. I tried to do everything that I could on my part. I actually was listening to the Bible through the night. I would put my phone next to my bed, and I would turn on an audio Bible just to play through the night. So when I woke up in the night, I could hear the voice of God speaking
beautiful.
Instead of these negative voices coming to my head. So I was trying to do the best that I could. I actually was trying every what I would call sleep aid that you could find in the pharmacy, right? In fact, I called you.
You did.
Looking
Several
for
times.
something to calm me down.
Some melatonin.
So you recommended some things to me. I think I tried them all. My kids, it was kind of funny that if we were in a store and they couldn't find me, my kids would tell my wife, "Oh, we know where he is," and they would go over in the pharmacy. And they would find me like looking at the sleep aids, of all the different types of sleep aids. And my cupboard was full of them, and I tried them all. And they're very interesting because some of them are dreamers, right? So some of them make you really have these wild dreams. And it was like, once you have those, you don't want to go back to that sleep aid. But they really weren't working. And so this was what was happening in this journey. So I want to call it my descent into the valley, right? I was going down. This was the greatest trip of my life. And you'll see as we continue why it was the greatest trip of my life. As I go down into that valley.
Let me stop you there for 1 second. So as a pastor, and I look up to you as one of my mentors, and I would often go to you for spiritual advice. So here you are facing all of these difficulties and having this physical pain associated, reminding you daily what's happening in your life. When you pray to God, did you have relief from that? Did you feel that God was listening to you, or where were you spiritually at this point, even though all these other things were happening physically to you?
Yeah. So I was praying. I was reading my Bible. I hadn't let go of that. I was still full of unrest. I think you come to the point when you're in a circumstance and it's deep that to a certain degree you can take your eyes off of God. Okay. So I believe I allowed my eyes to be taken off of God onto my circumstances because these, when I want to call voices in my head, were so powerful that even though God was speaking through His Word, right, that I'm His child and everything, these voices were louder to me than the voice of God, and I allowed them to get the best of me. Again, guilt and shame are powerful, right? And so the evidence that it appeared that I was being punished for the decisions that I made was pretty good to me, right? So the evidence was, of my wife in a car accident, my health, and just strange things, water coming into my house during a hurricane, it was just a lot of things that were happening.
But essentially, you didn't do anything wrong, so why would you feel guilt and shame?
Well, you see, but I resigned from an organization that I had worked for 30 years, and I loved what I did. And it's when you feel you're called by God, I think people meant well, right? So there was people in leadership position that had actually said things to me like I was being a bad soldier, I was being insubordinate, and I don't want to judge why they were saying that to me. All I'm saying is when I was down in the valley, those voices were still loud.
It seemed like they were just echoing.
Right. So there was a number of things adding up that were like against me. And once the devil's got you and you're weak, and I'm talking about you're weak. I was helpless. I was broken. It was like being paralyzed. And I was trying everything that I could do on my part to get out of the valley. Everything that I knew, exercising, keeping myself busy, listening to the scriptures through the night, trying to find some way of getting rest, and so that's what was happening.
You're doing all the right things.
Yeah. So I ended up going to the surgeon, right? Well, actually, let me back up before it was after I went to the surgeon, but before I get to the surgeon, I want to go to where I was. I went to see a doctor friend, right? I went to see a doctor friend, and I shared with him what was happening to me. And he listened to me, and he said, it's just stress. And he said, I can put you through a lot of tests, but I see this all the time. It's just, it's stress. The pain that you're experiencing and everything, I don't see anything wrong. We did blood work. We did it all. In fact, the first blood work that came through, there was something that was a little red. I sent it out to him, but I also sent it to another doctor friend. The other doctor friend said, it looks like there's something wrong with your kidneys, right? And you should do a test because this could be the beginning of kidney failure.
It's the least thing you needed to hear.
Right. Now, the doctor they had gone to, he didn't think anything of it, but I still had that voice, right?
Right, in the back of your mind.
So the recommendation was to do the blood work over again in a month to see what was going on. But during that month, obviously, there was those thoughts of how could my kidneys be failing? I mean, what is happening?
What else could happen to me?
What's next, right? Right. Well, what's next? So he told me my brother had died of cancer of the esophagus because of stress. He had lost his son to a brain aneurysm at 16 years old. His son was 16. So within a year and a half, my brother had died of cancer of the stomach and the esophagus. They believed that the stress had caused that. So I was having a lot of digestion problems and so on. So the doctor was like, my doctor friend was like, look, I think it's stress, but if you want me to send you through tests, I'll send you through tests. So I went through tests. They put a scope down
just
me.
to rule it out, just in case.
To rule it out. Because I said, well, let's do it. They did it. There was no problems in ruling it out.
Praise God.
Yeah, and praise God for that. And when we did the blood work again, everything looked fine with that. And then I went to the surgeon, right? So I go to the surgeon, and he does an examination on me in regard to the hernia. And he looks at me and he goes, "You don't have a hernia." I said, "Well, but doc, I've got pain and it radiates, and this keeps me awake at night." He said, "Well, I'm just telling you, it's not a hernia."
Well, that's a relief in one sense, but then where's the pain coming from?
Yeah, and I said, "Well, what about the sonogram?"
Yes.
Right? What about that? And he said, "Well, I really don't pay much attention to those things in regard to hernias. I don't put a lot of stock in those." Just like that.
Doctor.
But I was like, "But doc, it showed on the picture." And he said, "Well, I don't have it. I don't have it here, right?" So he said, I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" And he said, "I don't know, but it's probably a strain of some kind." I said, "What do you suggest that I do?" He said, "Nothing." He said, "Just live with it." Wow. And so I shared with him things that I was going through. This is the interesting part about him. Sharing with him things that I was going through, and he begins to quote scripture verses to me.
Wow.
He said, "Pastor Bob, just forget about that. Other churches."
This is your physician talking to you?
No, this is the surgeon.
The surgeon. Interesting.
Yeah. He said, "Forget about that." He said, "God has got you. You are called by God. God has got you. He has a special purpose for you." And he's speaking life into me.
Wow.
I had never met this gentleman before.
That's amazing. He doesn't even know your story.
Well, I told him a little bit about what I was going through as we were talking, right? And so on. And that was it. And he just immediately started quoting Bible verses to me. And he's like looking me straight in the eye. His nurse comes in to tell him, "Look, you got another patient." He's like, basically, I'll get there.
You were his priority.
Yeah, he didn't leave.
Time.
We didn't leave. He just kept going.
As you're sharing that, Bob, I just see like God's loving hand upon you, We talk about seeing, experiencing, and living God's radical love.
Yeah.
And I just saw right there and then that the surgeon, when God was using the surgeon, his words of compassion, you said he put his hand on your shoulder and he was just, reaching out to you with God's hope of love. In your life.
Here's a verse that he quoted to me in Isaiah, which is so interesting. And this guy's quoting these things from memory, right? So he didn't do the first part. Verse 27 of Isaiah chapter 40 says this, "Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and why my just claim is passed by over my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the weak." This is where he was quoting. "He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." And he's speaking this to me.
He's speaking
right
faith
there.
into your heart.
Are you weak? God's going to make you strong. He's got a purpose for you.
That's exactly
just
the
keep
words that you
moving
needed to hear at that moment.
I thought there was an angel there. Right? And
That's beautiful. That's
I
powerful.
left there going just in awe.
You were uplifted.
I was uplifted. Yeah. I left there.
Well, I just appreciate you sharing your journey down into the valley. And I know that one of your favorite pastimes is hiking in the mountains. And as we know, when we go physically through the mountains, sometimes there's valleys as well, right? In order to get up the mountain, you have to kind of go through the valley to get to the pinnacle, as you will. So as we're wrapping things up, Pastor Bob, is there something that you'd like to share with our viewing audience that you'd like to leave with them? Something that is major importance to you?
I do. But before I get to that, I just want to share that my journey into the valley, because I'm talking about a journey into the valley, was once you allow negative thoughts to roll in your mind, and you're allowing that negative thoughts to embrace you, right? The Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
Correct.
That it's like a snowball going down a hill. It just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah, the momentum. So for me, my journey into the valley was like, if I was a light bulb on a dimmer switch, then the light just gradually went out. Right? It was gradually going out.
I could visualize that.
Until finally it was like a dark spot. If you can imagine laying in a coffin and the bottom half of the top was closed, the top half was beginning to close. I mean, the thoughts that were coming to my mind was, look, this is God punishing you. You're done. You've ruined your ministry. This is it for you. There's no purpose in you living anymore. This is how dark it got. And yet God was bringing people like this surgeon along. I remember, Rick, you saw where I was at. You would text me these beautiful text messages. You would send me songs that would uplift me. When my wife was in a car accident, there was this gentleman who had been watching us online for 8 months, and he showed up to church before I left. He was not a member of the denomination. When my wife was in a car accident, he would call me. And he dropped off a car in my driveway.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he dropped off an SUV and said, use it as long as you want.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just see God sustaining you through this whole journey.
God was sustaining me. So there was in the darkness, there was this light that was flickering, right? There was this light that was forming, right? And giving me encouragement to hold on amidst this battle. There was no doubt about it in my mind. This was a spiritual battle for me. This was a warfare over really how I saw God and what I had taught about God versus what I want to consider a lie of the enemy, that God was disappointed with me, and that was it for me.
It's so hard, as I hear you speak, it's so hard for me to visualize you that way, because to me, you're such a light and you have so much love to give and you have so much inspiration to share with others. And the fact that you had to go through that journey yourself, and I get sad just thinking about the fact that your light was diminishing and getting small to like a little flicker, but yet God put people in your path, and this guy brought you a car out of nowhere, and people were encouraging you with texts and songs and praying for you. And little by little, your light got a little bit brighter and a little bit more brighter, so that you could see that God was in your midst. That
it was
you were not
sustaining
alone.
me in the darkness,
alone.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's sustaining you, right? So you asked me what I would want to share with the audience. I would just want to say that no matter where you are, no matter how dark your situation may be, God is there. Right? So God is there. But what God showed me when I was in that darkness, as weak as I was, I still had a weapon. I still had a weapon. I was weak. I was helpless. Talk about being beaten down. It was like guilt and shame had beat me down to where there was nothing left. I had no strength left. I was present with people, but I wasn't there. So the weapon that God showed me was my power of choice. I still had a choice to make.
That's deep.
Yeah. And I could embrace these negative thoughts, or I could choose what I saw and I knew of God and hold on to. So, but I also realized that God can exercise that power of choice for me. Just like I want to say to the audience that we all have a power of choice. God can't make that choice for you. You have to make that choice for yourself. So no matter what situation you find yourself in, remember that God is present with you, and choose him. Even though you can't see through the darkness. I couldn't see through the darkness. Choose God. Hold on to God. You then allow God to work in you, right? I'm giving God permission now to work in me because he's the author of free will. He won't force his presence upon you. So by making a choice and exercising that choice, I was allowing God to work in me. That was the beginning of hope.
That's the secret right there.
It's the secret.
Yeah, by allowing him to work in your heart.
By allowing him to work in your heart. Yeah. So that was my journey into the valley, Rick. And
yes.
Yeah.
Powerful. I know there's much more to share, and we look forward to hearing more in the following episode. But a verse came to my mind when you, at the beginning of the podcast, you talked about the different seasons and that you shared in New York. You know, you have the fall, winter, summer, and spring. And it reminds me of this verse in Ecclesiastes in the Bible in chapter 3. It says, "To everything there is a season, a time and a purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." Mm-hmm. And I could just see that throughout you going into the valley, you were in each of these places, right? And you had been at war, the spiritual battle, right? At war with yourself. I can almost picture like the little cliche of the little good angel and the little bad angel on your shoulder, right? And they're trying to vie for your attention and to gain control of your thoughts and your mind. But, you know, knowing that God is with you all the time, you were able to silence the negative voice and focus on God's word and allow him to speak to you into your, and to give you strength. And as the verse that you shared, that you will soar like on the wings of eagles, you know, he gave you that strength to rise above the challenges that you were facing. Before, I used to travel on business, and they'd always told me it's always sunny above the clouds. And it never really stood with me before until I actually was on a plane, and it was the pilot said, "It's raining. There's a storm where we're going to land, so we're going to have to divert the plane a little bit." And I realized, but it's perfectly sunny up here. Mm-hmm. And that's when the verse came back to me, and I was like, wow, they were right. It's always sunny above the clouds. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that God allowed you to see that the sun was still shining in your life. That little flicker of light was beaming into your heart. And that was God saying, there's still hope, Pastor Bob. And there's hope for each and every one of us, right? If we allow God into our heart, we know that this is not the end. That no matter if we face challenges in our life or obstacles or setbacks, and for Pastor Bob, this was a major setback, and everything was happening all at once. So he was like a snowball effect, as he mentioned. But the one thing he clung to was the Word of God. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm thankful that you are a whole person. And we're going to get to a little bit more into detail of what happened to you. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, and just, again, just a thought. I know we're going back here on and we're wrapping up. Sure. But different things happening. So after all these things were happening to me, my daughter's singing in a cantata, and I'm sitting in the foyer, and the double doors of the church, of the sanctuary, burst open. And I see somebody carrying somebody. I see legs, and I see a body, and it's my daughter.
Oh, my. I remember that moment vividly.
You talk about, and you thought, okay, maybe she did faint, but we were going to get her back up. Well, when we had her down on the ground, she was going in and out, right? And it was just another hammer on a nail. Mm-hmm. It was another hammer on a nail.
That's right.
So it was that. It was these things. I just want to be clear. It was these things that when I went into the valley, I never had so many things happen like that in my life. Never. I was always thought I was an optimistic person, and
the enemy knows our weaknesses, and he knows when we're vulnerable. That's when he strikes.
Well, yeah, and like I said, lack of sleep when you're not sleeping.
And he struck you where it hurts. The things that you love most in life, with your career, your wife, your finances with all the house repairs, and now your daughter.
Yeah.
Everything happening in sequence.
Yeah, and I was making a choice when you're making a choice to resign from something because you had, hopefully you were choosing to go in a different direction for God, to serve Him. But like I said, down in that valley, there was light there. I know we have another episode coming up where I'm going to talk about the journey in the valley, right? So we went down into the valley. Now we're going to talk about what that journey was like inside that valley. And then we will talk about getting out of that valley.
Perfect. Well, we look forward to that and hearing more about your journey. I just want to thank you all for joining us today for the Loveshaped Life. And if you like what you heard, please share it with a friend. Please look us up at loveshaped.life for more information. And you can look up our podcast. They will be there. And also, if you want to reach out to Pastor Bob personally, you could look up hello@loveshaped.life. And you could reach out and ask more questions and find out more about his journey through the valley. So thank you for joining us, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Loveshaped Life podcast. We hope you find this podcast not only inspirational, but life-changing. Here at Loveshaped Life, we're working to create a community, an online community, in fact, where individuals like you can connect with each other and lean into God's love together.
We also provide spiritual wellness coaching where we walk alongside people to help them to see the beauty of God's character, discover if there's anything that might be hindering them from finding the healing power that's in that love.
And as you might have expected, Loveshaped Life is crowdfunded. Individuals like you give generously to make this dream a reality. If you'd like to join that crowd, you can give today at loveshaped.life.